So you talk about the hierarchy. Does that make, in a much larger scale, right? And we're talking about, I'm not even talking about just 2,000 attendees, right? I'm talking about like huge concert level mega churches where it's like full stadium. I mean, it's usually Dallas, right? Dallas. I think Georgia has a lot, in Atlanta. Right. But so let's talk about on that scale. Does that make accountability that much harder? Right. So like you have the hierarchy flow, and you have to, right, in order for that to also happen. But let's just say 20,000 people on any given, right? Only now 10 people know about this thing that happened, right? Is that?
I would say it's like that in smaller churches too, though. Like our church is about 400-ish, right?
Yeah.
And we have an organizational structure. We have zone elders and stuff that kind of like condense that down to a smaller size. If I'm at a church of 20,000 and only 10 know what my struggle is, that's probably the 10 that I'm closest with. I would argue that could be a good thing.
I wasn't talking about the struggle. I'm talking about
Or just actually know you in general.
a scandal happening in your church. Like you're misusing whatever that is.
Okay.
You're misusing people, you're misusing funds, you're misusing insert bad thing.
Okay.
How much, right? Like the accountability of that. Does that become more tempting for people to be able to sweep it under the rug because you're like, well, only 10 people know about it and I can pay them off, or I can fire them from staff, right? Like there's a lot more power dynamics at play. Especially like at a church now where there's not a lot of people on staff, right? So like I think the more money comes into it, the more sticky it gets. And we could talk about that. I don't know if somebody disagrees with that.
That organizational structure, like there's going to be layers the more people you have.
Right.
And I understand what you're saying. Like the more layers there is, the more space there is for things to get lost in translation or hid in translation. But I think that stuff depends on like the character and not just the people, but the culture of the organization itself, right? I'm using organization. I hate to sound so corporate about the church, but at the end of the day, it's an assembly of a lot of people, and there has to be some sort of organizational structure for any sort of order.
If you take out the feelings behind church, that's what it is. You know, like if somebody were to come in and say, this is an organization, there's no other way about it. There's a group of people who come together for a purpose, and so you're not wrong.
I do think the larger that you scale, the easier it is to sweep certain things under the rug. But ultimately, I do believe that it comes down to the heart of the leadership. Senior pastor, whoever is in leadership, bishop, so on and so forth. Whoever is in leadership, it comes down to their heart about how they handle that particular situation, insert the bad situation. Because ultimately, they have to give an account to God for how they stewarded God's people. What did they do to lead God's people ultimately closer to Christ? Did they do bad things or did they do good things, right? And so hopefully, prayerfully, the heart of the senior pastor or whatever leadership is there, hopefully that heart posture is pure and reflects God's character.
So, thought just came into my head with that. And let's just say you have a pastor who speaks sound word, gains, there's more people that start coming to the church, which is what every church wants, right? More people to come and hear the word. Then it just keeps growing. More money starts coming in, right? More this. And now you have a pastor who maybe was like, well, I want to speak on this. But now there's a board. Now there's, oh, well, you can't say that, right? You can't do this. And now you have other people now influencing and trying to, I don't know if that is the case, right? But I imagine that can easily happen when it gets to be of places that size, or when you get true, celebrities go to church too, right? Like, I mean, you have true, like big money that can come into play here. Do you think does that play a factor into, or is it just those pastors, and I'm talking about predominantly here, like prosperity gospel, or, you know, where things start to, but maybe that's not how it started, right? It started with true intentions. And now it's become into easy believism, or you can't really say that because you'll ruffle feathers, and we just have too many followers and we really can't afford to lose. Or is that coming from the pastor themselves, right? Like
I would say that, like, fundamentally, it is easier to disciple and hold accountability in a smaller setting, right? That smaller setting could be a small setting in a big setting, could be a big church, right? But when you talk about a pastor with, let's say, there's lots of power or money or influence, etc., and there's a potential to misuse those things, they're still being held accountable to those people around him, right? For what he does and does not do. So if those people who know, right, those are his like small group, his disciple group around him, that he's doing these things and they are complicit in that, and that's on all of them, not just the pastor.
You know, I think about PK's told the story multiple times when we were looking for a church home, right? We used to be at the firefighters hall over off of I-10, and it was church in the box, that whole story, right? And remember he was talking about, I don't know what building it was, but he said there was somewhere like off the highway, like highway frontage. Would have been a bigger building, right? I guess I don't want to say more glamorous because we have a nice facility right now, right? But there was that allure to it. It would have cost more money and all this sort of stuff. So, right. But my point is, he ended up choosing to come where we are right now, 12525 Nacogdoches. Come see us. I'm sorry, I'm just playing, but I'm serious. But
San Antonio,
San Antonio, Texas. Come on now. I don't know if you're gonna find too many other Nacogdoches.
There's a G
Maybe
in
in
there.
Texas.
Yeah.
Maybe in
There's
Texas. But if you watch it somewhere else, we ain't hard to find. I'm sorry, Coach Prime. Let me get back to it. But PK, right? He talked about that, and he made a decision that was, I would say, more wise, to not chase the highway frontage and to find somewhere and make it ours. But where I was going was, the bigger you get, the bigger facility, the more people, the bigger staff, all that stuff costs. And there are pressures that come associated with that.
Right.
And I would imagine, almost bet that is where we see some of the, when we start to bend the gospel and we start to become, what's my C word that I'm thinking of?
corrupt.
Not corrupt. We've been talking about, I don't know, I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, where you start to manipulate the word, and you commingle
Yes.
the gospel with fleshly pursuits and desires, because maybe you got to keep the lights on, right? You have to do all these things to support what you built. Man, I hate talking like that. And you may think you're doing the right thing, but at some point, all that stuff is going to commingle and it's going to pollute what you do. So I can't say this or else I'm going to lose my members, or I don't want them to go somewhere else because they're giving 10% and they in the middle class, you know what I'm saying? They upper middle class. Right. Like all that stuff comes into play. I'm looking at numbers. Oh man, our tithes changed. Let me preach on tithes. Like
That's the
all that
wrong
stuff is
perspective,
real.
though.
And if as a leader, you're not rooted and stay rooted, then all that stuff is just gonna slowly seep in and change your perspective on things.
So, go ahead.
I think that's the main part that I was thinking about as you're speaking is our leaders of the church have to be rooted in God's word, have to commune with God often, like have to be aligned with what God's word says and what his will for our lives are. Because if you think about it, right, an overseer, right? Peter talks about an overseer, and he gives a description of what an overseer is supposed to do. If you really study that, they're an overseer over your soul.
Yeah.
Right? That's heavy. Like that is heavy. And so just to summarize it up, and basically what I was thinking about when you were saying that is our leaders in the church, in order to not produce a compromised culture, have to be rooted in God's word and have to know his will for our lives.
So 1 Timothy 6:9-11 says, "But people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and some people, craving money, have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrow. But you, Timothy, are a man of God, so run from all these evil things, pursue righteousness and a godly life, along with faith, love, perseverance, and gentleness." And previously it's talking about, right before that, leaders. I think it's in like the 5th verse right before that, but it's talking about how easy, like, you come out if you've always wanted money, and that desire maybe got swept up amongst, and you became a pastor, right? You think that the devil's not going to capitalize on that, and it's going to become, whether or not the intention started out good. And then that's that we're assuming the best, right? Let's just be honest, some leaders that we've seen fall from mega churches, or we've not even fall, we've just heard stories about, you can't tell me that all had good intentions starting out, right?